Hi there, education fans. You know me. I'm Sieva Kaczynski, founder and CEO of Study Soup. We love education, so we're bringing you educators, influencers, and people who are leading in this space to tell you a little bit about what they're working on. Today we're joined by Paul LeBlanc, who's the president of Southern New Hampshire University, which is widely regarded as one of the most innovative universities in the country. Forbes magazine named him one of its 15 classroom revolutionaries, and he's a widely sought-after speaker on the topic of innovation and higher education. It's great to have you, Paul.
That's great to be with you, Sieva.
So let's get into it. Tell me a little bit about why your new College for America program is getting so much attention. It's really not the first competency-based education around, right?
No, by a long shot. Competency-based education has been around for 30, 40 years, depending on how you define it. So while that is true, I think what gets people's attention is that this is the first competency-based program to fully untether from the credit hour. So a lot of competency-based programs are about accelerated pathways through what looks like a pretty conventional curriculum. And all of it's sort of mapped to 3 credit units. And that's sort of, the 3 credit hour, the Carnegie unit, as some people call it, is sort of the Higgs boson particle of higher ed. It kind of defines everything we do, including financial aid, most importantly. So back in April of 2013, when the Department of Education approved our program, it was under something called the Provisions for Direct Assessment of Student Learning. This seems like the most obvious thing in the world. Shouldn't we always be directly assessing actual learning? But it's the first time that federal financial aid dollars could go to a program that was not about courses and credit hours, but rather some way of directly assessing student learning. And what's critical about that is that it allows you to flip the credit hour, because the credit hour is really pretty good at telling you how long someone sat. It's just not very good at telling you what they learned. And if you think about a transcript, you infer certain things when somebody took sociology or intro to psych. You actually don't know what they did, what they know how to do. So what we said is that we're going to be crystal clear about the claims for learning, and those are non-negotiable, and time will be the variable. Just flip it. Time is the thing that we don't care about very much. So if you can enter our program and demonstrate your mastery of our math competencies on day 1, why would we make you sit through 16 weeks of college math? Just do it and move on. On the other hand, if you have always struggled with writing, why would we think that a 16-week college composition course would suffice, or that a C in that course suffices? So we have no grades, we have no sliding by. You either have mastered or not yet. And what you start to, I think, quickly ascertain is that this really sort of redefines almost everything we think about when we think about the learning process. So it's getting a lot of attention for that reason.
This is phenomenal, really flipping it on its head. So just to sum it up, the first competency-based education in the U.S. that was approved by the Department of Education, no courses as such, no units, and just 120 competencies for around $2,500 a year is the price tag. Is that what you guys are going for? That's
right. So it's actually, so I just want to be careful. It's the first one approved under direct assessment provisions, because Western Governors, Charter Oaks, Excelsior, they've all been approved by the Department of Ed, and they all do competency. Okay. But this is the first under direct assessment. And so going to your question about price, it's $1,250 every 6 months. And you can go, it's all you can eat. So if you could finish the program in under 6 months, you'd earn your associate's degree for $1,250. And in fact, our first graduate went from 0 credits to an associate's degree in under 100 days.
Wow. That's perfect.
Yeah. Now, he's an exceptional case. If you want, I can tell you a little bit about him real quickly, because I think he exemplifies in many ways who we seek to serve, which are people who have been largely marginalized by traditional higher ed. In this case, Zach Sherman works in a Troy, Ohio food plant for ConAgra, where he works the sanitation shift where they make Slim Jims, and he does that in the graveyard shift. And he would come home every day, take a shower, grab breakfast, and then he treated his education like a job. That is, he was in the system all day long, every day, 7 days a week. So Zach had a number of things going for him. He was unencumbered, so he might not say this is something going for him, but he had no spouse, no kids. He didn't have things pulling at his time. He was really driven. There was some promise of better work at the end when he finished his degree, so I had incentive. And he had a really keen mind. He's a voracious reader. Like, this is a dream student in the raw, but he lacked one thing, and he lacked it forever, which is money. And we took that problem away, and we gave him a pathway to a degree, and he just took off.
That's a great case study story for the future success.
It's a great
of this
first
program.
student, right? I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be our first student, but he's a great first graduate.
That's awesome. You know what? On that note, I'm interested in hearing. Have you seen any failures on your end? You know, this is obviously a new program. Have you seen this not working for certain people, or what are you guys struggling with that you're looking to overcome?
So this is going to sound disingenuous, but I think it's an important point. Students tell us one of the things they love about this program is that the alternative to success is not failure, it's not yet. Right? So these are adults, many of whom have had really sort of mixed academic histories, and with failure, with the F. We don't have S, right? We have mastery and not yet. So we're a year in, and the first part of that was really a pilot program. Could even argue maybe not even a year. And what we are seeing is that what we're really trying to understand is who does this work best for? And we are seeing sprinters like Zach who just take it and run with it, and then we are seeing people who struggle. And one of the very critical, so there are a couple of critical things that happen, and they're related. One is that we've pretty quickly determined that and we now deal with this in the orientation, scheduling is huge. So these are people juggling work, family, soccer practice, parent-teacher conference, a part-time job on top of their full-time job. They have crazy busy lives, and it's often very reactive. And one of the first conversations we now have with them is, okay, how many hours a week can you carve out to do this? You don't have to, because we don't care if you go fast or slow. What we really, and this is the key point, we just need you to stay on pace. And if you don't have a schedule, if you don't protect those times, it'll be easy to have them gobbled up, and then you'll fall off pace. And when adult learners fall off pace is when they disappear. So that's really been one of the first and early critical observations on this. We also correlate very highly, no surprise, ability in writing with your sort of ability to be successful in the program. That might say that about every college student in America, by the way. But what we do now is we take a writing sample in the very beginning, and it's a pretty good predictor of how people will do in the program. But we then, knowing that, it's not accepting struggle, it's about making sure we're wrapping as much sort of support around a student as he or she needs.
That's very interesting that people who have better writing skills in the beginning are more likely to succeed at this. Have you guys put in some sort of checks and balances now that you've noticed that the scheduling is a big issue for people? Are you making sure people are staying on schedule? Yeah,
so one of the things we do is a couple things. One is we now talk about scheduling and help them develop scheduling skills right in the first week, right, during orientation to the program. It's funny, we had one student who sort of exclaimed, wow, I never kept a schedule before. Now I keep 3. And we're like, well, maybe that's a little too much, right? Like, let's see if we can get that into one master schedule. If you're like, oh, I went for work, I went for family, I went for school. It's like, let's see if we, but it's a revelation to people about, right? I mean, we know this, right? Even busy white-collar professionals who realize that taking a minute in the beginning of the day to write a to-do list and a priority list are more productive. It's about sort of priorities and schedules and protecting time. And so why wouldn't it be also true for folks in this program? So that's a very powerful thing. Then we monitor in our system, we built the platform on Salesforce. So super powerful CRM, allows us to collect a lot of data, allows us to do a lot of monitoring. So the CRM really flags for our advisors, we call them coaches, and every student has a dedicated coach. Whenever students haven't been in the system for a certain amount of time, are in and out quickly, or where we just sort of see these flags that are worrisome, and we'll sort of intervene as quickly as we can. That's really critical.
Wow, using Salesforce, that's a completely new idea. I assume I don't know any other schools that are using Salesforce, but maybe they do. That's a very interesting way of seeing it.
We're actually over 1,000 now. It's really like a stealth presence in higher ed that I think folks who look at technology often, Salesforce doesn't rise to the top of the list, right? Blackboard and Banner and PeopleSoft and all sorts of systems, but actually Salesforce is getting a lot of penetration, and it's an incredibly powerful CRM, and it's an incredibly powerful platform upon which to build. It almost has an unfortunate name because, in the world of academia, sales, sure, it's not something we want to talk about, but actually treat it as a platform in CRM, it's amazing.
Very interesting, and I know a lot of other companies that actually build their entire company off of the Salesforce CRM. We're just working in the background, so that makes sense. And actually, on that note, we've mostly been talking about your College for America program. However, I'm very interested in hearing, what do you think, how's technology driving innovation in this space?
So we think of technology in sort of three ways. And when I talk to my peers who, ideas are coming at them left and right, this is sometimes a useful lens. So the first one is technology that allows you to keep doing what you've always done, but do it better. And higher ed actually has a pretty good track record of that. We've been using technology for a long time, and a lot of the most innovative technologies in the world today were born in our campuses. So that's a great one, and it improves quality, but it doesn't change the way you do your work very much, and it tends to add a lot of cost. So that's the trade-off you make. Second box, if you will, the second way to think about technology is technology that allows you to keep doing what you do, but that takes cost out of the equation. So when you walk up to an airport kiosk, most of the underlying business rules are exactly the same as they were 20 years ago. That is, your name's being checked against a passenger manifest, a credit card list, a TSA no-fly list now over the last 10 years, more than 10 years. You're getting a baggage tag generated, appropriately keyed to your passenger manifest. You're getting a boarding pass printed. And the first time you deal with a human being is when you walk up to the counter and show your license and hand over your bag. So all the business rules, the rules of the game are the same, and they've driven out costs by driving out people. So higher ed has a lot of these sorts of tools, not on the academic side, but typically in the back office side. We don't, because most of us are not-for-profit, we're not very good at driving people out of the mix. So we don't really realize the cost savings very much. I said this at EDUCAUSE, 4,000 CIOs, and a number of them took issue with me. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But from my sense, at least in my institution, I'm not sure we've driven a lot of cost out of the equation. But it does allow you to serve more people and scale, et cetera. Now, the third use of technology goes more directly to your question, I think. It's the interesting one, which is when you harness technology to actually not do what you've done before but better, not do what you've done before but cheaper, but to actually change what you've done. In other words, change the rules of the game. So, if you think about what Amazon did to the book industry, it changed the rules of the game. If you think about what Napster did to the music industry, it changed the rules of the game. If you think about what Craigslist did to the newspaper industry, it gutted its business model, which is classifieds and advertising, changed the rules of the game, along with eBay and other things. That's really for us the sort of interesting way to think about this, and it doesn't happen in isolation. So there are two other questions we talk about quite often when we think about this. Sorry for the long answer to your short question, but if you're thinking about how technology doesn't drive innovation, technology supports innovation, and the innovation we're interested in is technology connected with jobs to be done. In other words, what problem are you trying to solve and for whom? So that's a real sort of key strategic piece, and a lot of what you're seeing in higher ed, especially in the ed tech sector, is focusing on a very specific problem as opposed to trying to do everything. I do peer-to-peer learning, so I'm going to build my platform. I do third-party advising, so I create smarter thinking. Right, so you do pieces of it, and you do it really, really well, and you harness technology to do that job better and cheaper than the incumbents. Then the third thing we look at, really, so it's technology, it's jobs to be done there, and then it's unbundling, and I've just alluded to that. So when industries are very mature, you can start to unbundle pieces of it. So higher ed's always unbundled. We don't think of it this way, but we've all said, hey, no, we're not really great at food service. Let's pay somebody else to do it. It's not our business. We're not great at maintenance. Let's pay some other firm to do our maintenance. We're not great at, fill in the blank. But we've never unbundled the core academic experience. And that's what's happening right now. When you take those three things, the vector, the overlap, is where you get real key here, which is business model innovation. So that's really what we did at College for America, was innovating around the business model and driving the cost down, because we were able to be very clear about who we were trying to serve, really try to think hard about the unbundling. So we took all those pieces out and said, okay, we still got to get this done. We still have to help students get the resources they need, for example. But how could we do it differently? And then the last thing is then bringing the appropriate technology to make that happen.
What technologies are you guys using that's really helping you out with that?
So critical piece, of course, would be a Salesforce as our LMS. We built our LMS on the Salesforce platform, which allows a lot of great data collection and insight and support. That's really critical for us. Second piece would be we're making extensive use of Google Chrome and other, to bring down student costs. So we've driven our technology cost in CFA, College for America, down to $12 per student. super inexpensive, right? So that's an important piece. We're looking at a lot of OER, open education resources on the web to drive the cost of content out of the mix as much as we can. That could be anything from a MOOC to Khan Academy to whatever's out there. So those are all the sort of ways I think that we use this. It's not that any of it is dazzling by itself. It's that in the combination, it becomes really powerful.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, you did an interview with an online college magazine, and I'm going to take a quote from it. Feel free to let me know if it's out of context or if it no longer applies. Here it comes. So it says, LeBlanc hopes that by 2014, SNHU will boast the country's biggest online not-for-profit education system. Where are you with that goal, and is that still one of the numbers that you're looking to provide?
Yeah, so we are closing in on that goal. We're probably third or fourth largest among the not-for-profits today. There are a couple of larger ones, Liberty University, UMUC. These are larger than we are, but they're not a lot. Probably, again, I think we're probably third or fourth largest. So we're closing in on that. In some ways, it's not the number that matters so much. It really was about the ambition to extend our mission and serve more students. That's what we're about. And I think the need's never been greater. You've got 37 to 40 million American adults with some credits and no degree at a time when 70% of all new jobs require a 2-year degree or its equivalent. So the need is there. And in reality, the for-profit sector rushed into the void when online learning really took off in the late 90s. The non-for-profit sector looked down its nose at it, frankly, in the aggregate, and really ceded that territory to these new competitors because they sort of didn't care. And now we're in a very different place, and I think what we see is that many of the for-profits are sort of back on their heels and losing enrollments, and we see growth in schools like ours and others who are entering in the space. And EduVentures predicts that between 300 and 500 not-for-profits will enter into the online market space or take their very small programs and try to expand them. So it's a vibrant time, and I think it's a time when the not-for-profit sector can in some ways take back the market, if you will, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the need is certainly there. I'm not too far out of college, so I identify with that. I do have one more question for you, but first of all, I want to throw out this awesome fact that 2012 SNHU was named Fast Company's number 12 world's most innovative company. That is awesome. You guys were after Apple, Facebook, and right after HBO, but ahead of Airbnb. That's magnificent. That's probably very unique that a university gets put on that list, really.
It was the only university that year.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I wanted you to talk a little bit about was your work with private companies and how you're partnering with, where you mentioned in previous article you've mentioned that you guys might be partnering with Stony Fields Farms or FedEx, or in this case, maybe in Zach's case, you guys are working with this company for education. Could you expand a little bit on that? That's very interesting.
Sure. So College for America, we really have in a very, very focused way thought about how we leverage the workplace to replace, in some ways, the affinity or learning space of a traditional classroom. So the students we seek to serve, as I said, often making minimum wage or hourly wages, sometimes not family-sustaining wages. So they need this degree. They need more stable work and better work. We think of ourselves as creating on-ramps to better work, better pay, more opportunity, and more education, by the way. We're working on a 4-year degree version of CFA right now. But going back to your question, so as we unbundle, we said, okay, if students are not going to come to campus, we're going to take the program to them, and they're not going to have the benefit of students around them or an instructor in front of them. How do we leverage the social capital in their life? And for a lot of working adults, their social capital resides in the workplace. And employers have an incentive, because they have a skills crisis in America today. They want better trained employees with better skills to work with us. So this was the notion so we work with employers to say, no, for employees that don't have technology, can you make that available to them in the workplace? Do you have people who are willing to be mentors to them who can help out? So if there's a group of your employees who are working on math competencies, somebody from bookkeeping willing to have lunch with them one day a week and kind of just talk through their issues. So really all the ways, and one of the most important and powerful ways is actually a psychological thing, and we don't think of it, right? It's everything like curriculum and delivery, but in reality, for a lot of people, the fact that the company even recognizes that they're in the program and says to them, this is important, is incredibly powerful. So we're influenced by the work of a sociologist at Brown named Greg Elliott, who writes about mattering. And he talks about this fundamental human need to matter, right? And what we've said, so if you think about where companies put their tuition dollars, it's often on the higher end of the hierarchy. Well, here we are working at the low end. So when a supervisor at Panera Bread, one of our partners, Panera Bread Company, the food chain, walks up to a guy working behind the counter and taps him on the shoulder and says, "Hey, Bob, we've been watching you. You're really good at what you do, and we think you have potential to be an assistant supervisor and then maybe a supervisor someday and work your way up. But we have this program. We need to get your college degree." It's incredibly powerful. So a lot of our partners are using the program as a talent development pipeline. So we have 50 or so corporate partners. They've been signing on like crazy. Our folks are out at McDonald's today. We're working with Partners Health in Massachusetts, the single largest employer in the state, working with University of Pennsylvania Medical Systems. They're offering it to all of their employees who make less than $35,000 a year. That's their target. They'll pay for the whole thing. And the price is low enough that money doesn't become the issue. And with our Department of Ed approval, students who might not have a tuition remission at work, if depending where their salary is, are eligible for Pell Grant dollars. And the Pell Grant, as you know, is about twice as much a year as the cost of our program. So we're really enabling a lot of people to access education who would not otherwise do it. And the workplace is a pretty powerful place to do that. So we love that idea of the workplace as affinity group. And what's really interesting is that we have no instructional faculty, remember. So there's no one working with you in a classroom. And what our students describe is the power of peer-to-peer learning, right? So one of the things they said to us was most important when we developed the platform is they wanted to know who else in their company was enrolled in the program, and they're finding each other. So and it's very organic in interesting ways. So they're organizing meetups after work. If I'm the guy who's sort of working on solving a math problem and I really struggle with math, I say, hey, you did this competency already. Can you tell how did you do this? And you get to say, I really struggled till I thought about flipping the fraction this way. And you see what happens? Okay, I got it. So it's really powerful stuff that happens. Yeah.
As you know, we are big supporters of peer-to-peer learning, so I'm happy that's also part of your guys' program as well.
Absolutely.
I have so many more questions for you, and I love what you guys are doing, but our time is pretty much up here. Paul, thanks so much for chatting. And
my pleasure.
What you're doing is really an inspiration. Keep on.
Thank you so much. Really great joining. Take care.